Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 320 of the Juicebox Podcast. A few weeks ago, on episode 314, I'm right about that, 314, Dr. Adam Naddelman came on to talk about the state of the coronavirus. Well, Adam is back, and it may only be a few weeks later, but the world feels 5 years different. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, to always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. The beginning of this episode is about how things are changing, but a large majority of it is really just two friends talking about how this whole situation's making them feel. I want to thank Touched by Type 1 and the Contour Next One blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Go to contournextone.com, and at the top, you'll see a button that says Get a Free Contour Next One meter. Click on that, and you'll find out if you're eligible. So I went out to get groceries just now, a couple hours ago. And I'm, I've got gloves on. I've got the schmutz in my pocket. I didn't have anything to cover my face with. So I was like, so I took like one of those like scarves that go around your neck and just kind of pull up. So now I look like I'm going to rob the place. It's funny how now no one cares about that. By the way, there are going to be amazing armed robberies once people figure that out. And so I'm in there, I did the stuff goes on my hands. I kind of clean the card off. I do what I can do. But by the time I get done, it's like a workout because everything's just different all of a sudden. Like nobody gets near each other. So there's waiting. Then you feel really rushed to hurry while you're taking the food. I had to do a checkout on a full cart of groceries, like by hand, because the ones that had cashiers were taking forever. And I got done and I walked outside and I was like, I don't want to eat this badly.
You're like, how about I get it like hooked up to something where I can just get my nutrition delivered to me once a week?
I would 100% take that. But what I was seeing was what was really super kind of interesting is, let me put this light on for a little bit, is that what I noticed is that all the little things that are built into our life for convenience, they're gone, at least, right? And and then suddenly you're left with the actual like process of going grocery shopping. Like I couldn't enjoy the music I had in my ears. You couldn't see, you couldn't see a guy rolling his eyes at his wife and like give him that knowing look like, I'm married too. Like, all that was gone. And if you had a mask on or you're covering your mouth in any way and someone wasn't, they looked at you with two looks. It was either, oh my God, that guy's sick, or, oh God, should I have a mask on too? And so everyone's in that, like they're doing that calculus while they're walking around constantly. And it's just, I don't know. I was like, this sucks. This can't stay like this forever. Cause all the reasons I like, being alive are kind of stripped out of this. I feel like an old man who's like, this is the way the world should be.
No, I know.
So you and I recorded a couple of weeks ago now. Is that about right? Time wise?
I actually looked, it was March 16th.
Oh,
so it was 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks, which feels like 3 months. But yeah, it's about 2 weeks ago.
Have you been out of your house? Are you going to work? How do you handle work?
Yeah, no, I'm still going to work. We are limiting incredibly who's allowed to come into the office. So we're seeing well visits. We actually have a screener at the door that's stopping people, making sure that no one's sick. Mm-hmm. No one's had a contact with a known positive case or traveled. Now, I mean, travel is not really an issue anymore because no one's been anywhere now for the last month. But and then if the answer to any of those questions is yes, then they don't come in.
Right.
If it's no, then they come in. Now, that's only for the people that actually even get an appointment. We're not letting anybody walk into the office at all. So you can't just like stroll in because you want to, hope to get an appointment. And we're primarily doing just well visits and the kind of sick visits that are not like infectious illnesses. So, the kid who falls off his bed and sprains his ankle, that kid can come to our office. But other than that, we're really not bringing the sick kids in at all. We're doing all telehealth for those.
Are most practices doing this?
Yes, or even more stringent than this.
Okay. Like some people are being like, hey, you twisted your ankle. go online,
go to the ER.
Google sprain.
No, they're like, yeah, they're like setting right. Either like try to create a mask out of 3 socks, or not a mask. I'm so used to saying mask. Create a ankle brace out of 3 socks, or go to the ER. No, we're still seeing kids that we think are relatively low risk. If someone shows up and they're not sure about anything, we just put a mask on them right away. And the doctors are all wearing masks and goggles and gloves now for every single patient, including well visits.
I'm looking at this. There's a couple of sites that are tracking things now. I've been using this one, ncov219.live, and it's got total confirmed worldwide cases at over 1 million.
Yeah, the one I like the best is the one from Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that one, but they had that actually the very first one. I was looking at that before there were even any cases in the U.S. That one is amazing, but yeah, they're over 1 million worldwide. That's just confirmed cases, obviously.
I switched to this
testing.
I switched to this one. Their numbers incredibly consistent with what I just saw on the other one, and it's funny too. Like, obviously, if you take away personal freedom, look, China. They're probably not reporting all their deaths, right? But it's an incredibly low number.
Well, the measures that they took were much more draconian than anything we could ever do here.
Yeah. They were dragging people out.
South Korea too. Yeah, South Korea was more just extremely aggressive testing, and then quarantining people who were positive quickly. So they had the ability to test a crazy number of people and get the results back fast.
Right.
So anyone with any symptom gets tested, they're positive, they're immediately quarantined. Unfortunately, because the testing here lagged for so long, there's so many people walking around that had it in the last month, don't even know it,
right.
Or have it right now and can't get tested.
Because of that, this is going to go on much longer than we're hoping it is, isn't it? Like, this isn't just a month away from being over.
Well, I think it's going to depend on how you define over. I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, I don't think this virus is going away so quickly, unless there's some dramatic breakthrough with treatment or with a vaccine. But even a vaccine would take probably 6 months to 18 months to actually get to market. But yeah, there's no reason to expect it's going to go away. It's just a matter of trying to spread out the cases to give the hospitals a chance to handle the volume. And right now they're getting close to not being able to handle it in some places.
And so what we're seeing right now is just sort of like it's the all at once feeling. Like it's happening to so many people within a 3 or 4 week period. And that's why the numbers keep kind of like growing as exponentially as they are. But you're going to still hear, like 6 months from now, you're going to hear somebody got this and ended up in the hospital on a vent. Like it's not going to lessen or change. The frequency is what will change. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's hard to know. Look, it depends on how many people are actually positive right now that we don't know about. There are some people estimating it could be 5 to 10 times as high as what's being reported in the U.S., especially in areas where there's a lot of cases, like in New York.
Okay.
So think about it this way, right? Like if that number was really, like I don't know what the exact number is for the U.S. now. It's got to be a couple 100,000 at least, several 100,000 because it's 1 million worldwide. But let's just say it's 10 times higher than that. There will be a point where there's some protection within communities because so many people have had it that a new case coming into the community can't wreak havoc the way it is now, because it's similar to like if, chickenpox shows up in your child's school and 99% of the kids there have either had it or been vaccinated, it can't do any damage, right?
Right.
So there will be a point where you have enough kids protected from an illness where if it comes into a school, it's not going to be able to do the same amount of damage. Now, so that leads to the argument that some people are trying to make that, well, why bother with all the social isolation? Just get everybody sick right now and then we'll be done with it. The whole reason you can't do that is because the hospitals could not handle it and you'd have a ton of people dying for no reason.
Right.
They couldn't get the care they need.
It would also overwhelm, we think of overwhelming healthcare workers as their time and effort, but you could also get them sick and you will, and you could lose a number of them too. And,
yeah, there's been over 100 in the U.S. that have died, supposedly.
That are
that was that's the latest tally that I saw. But no, there's no question about it. You overwhelm the whole system. It's not just the ventilators and the ICUs. It's the how many masks do you have? How many gowns do you have? How many gloves do you have? Do you have the right equipment to test people?
Right.
If you take, 5 million people and get them sick all at once, there's no way any healthcare system could handle that.
Yeah. We're basically, I mean, I don't know. We're draining a pool with a small hose so that our yard doesn't flood. You could just knock the side down and let all the water out, but that would ruin the lawn. And so you're just going to let it out a little bit at a time so we can manage what's happening. And so this is all about.
Well, and the other big thing about that is the slower that initial, or the lower that initial peak is, and the wider it is, the more time it takes, the more opportunity you give all of these drug trials that are going on, the vaccine trials, you give it all a chance to start to, for the science to catch up with what's going on. And with the hope that at some point you can really flatten it by treating it in a way that actually decreases the amount of serious illness.
Right. And you're starting to hear stuff like, I don't know, have you heard like some people are trying Z-Packs and having success?
The data is not there, unfortunately. So that's the whole, Plaquenil is the name of the medication, which is also called, hydroxychloroquine. It's a medication that's used for certain autoimmune conditions like lupus, for example.
Okay.
Very good for lupus. So one of the early studies, there was a study done in China and one in Italy where they took Plaquenil and they added Zithromax to it, and there were different doses, and the data was mediocre. It wasn't great, but they thought maybe there was a chance. So they've rolled that out in a lot of the sicker patients in the hospitals, but unfortunately the data that's coming back is not super promising. So people started hoarding Plaquenil all over the country, of course, right away. It's like, that might work. Yeah. There was one guy that ate his fish food or fish cleaner or something because it was made with hydroxychloroquine, the same chemical. Yeah. And he died. Unfortunately, He died. His wife's in the ICU. But so no, there's not a lot of data yet to support that that's going to be the thing that's going to make this all change.
Yeah. It's just, I think that unfortunately we've all grown up with the movies. Like you just think like there's going to be a guy late at night in a dark room and he's going to go, you know what it is? Chewy sweet tarts. It kills the coronavirus. I can't believe it took us this, and then it all goes away. And that's just, I don't see that happening. I'm assuming, I heard some, one of the doctors that's featured in that pandemic Netflix series, his company came out yesterday and they feel like they're on to something for inoculation. But at the same time, he said, bright lights, maybe 9 months if we're right to get it like all together. That's the other thing. Is it?
The first human vaccine trial started in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. But the stage that they're at in terms of the testing is safety. So it's sort of like, let's make sure this doesn't cause any harm first.
Right.
And once they finish that step, then it's all right, let's see what kind of effect it might have. But they said they're 12 to 18 months minimum, and they don't even know if it's effective yet.
Right. It's just, I have, obviously you do too, but I have that background from watching my wife. I know how long it takes from, hey, we think this is going to work to it works. Here it is in a box with a name,
I mean, the only difference now, I think, is for probably the first time ever, you have all of these different labs and different universities and different companies that are all working towards the two goals, right? They're working towards finding an effective treatment, and they're working towards trying to find a vaccine. So some are doing vaccines, some are doing treatment. Some of the bigger companies are trying to do both. And the interesting thing is, for the first time, they're actually sharing a lot of their information.
Yeah.
So like when someone thinks, oh, this might be, a step in the right direction, they are publicizing that together and they're working together. So I don't know that you've ever had a situation where essentially the entire world is trying to figure this out all at the same time. So that has to make you a little bit optimistic. It shouldn't be that difficult to figure out a treatment and to figure out one that can be ramped up quickly. But it's being attacked by a lot of different angles. And just what they're trying now first is the kind of possibilities that already exist. That's where that whole Plaquenil thing came from.
Right.
Because there was some thought that it has some antiviral activity when you do tests in like test tubes and stuff. So they said, there's a chance this might work. Sometimes it works for the flu. Let's try it. And they just started giving it to people with the hope that it would work. Same thing goes with Zithromax. That's another medication that has some amount of antiviral activity, not enough to recommend it for colds, but they figured, hey, let's just try it. Yeah. So I think that is one reason to be optimistic. You've never had the whole world working together.
That's because all the people who could benefit financially from making a drug like this weren't all at the same time thinking, oh, I could get this. That'll
Yeah.
straighten you right up.
Yeah. That will change your thought process. So,
Yeah. You know what? Let's just, whoever gets the money is good. I just want the pill, or whatever it ends up being. Well, good. Mother necessity and all that,
Yeah.
let them.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, unfortunately, there's just not that much right now that looks super promising. So you have to really try to get it away from the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And that's where the distancing still comes in.
Well, it's interesting because, there's a difference between what's really, like always, there's a difference between what's happening and what people want to be happening, or what they share, when they're talking online to each other. You'll hear some people say, like, we should talk about how many people have recovered. That's positive news. And I think that's true. I think we should. I also don't think that doesn't make sexy television, so you don't hear about it as much. And it is a shame. I mean, when you look at the real numbers, as I moved over to the site you're talking about, we have United States total recovered over 8,800, total deaths 5,600, but total confirmed 236,000. So, that's still, it's a reason to be encouraged. And it's also a reason, if you're part of the 5,600, it's a reason to think this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I think both are valuable points of view. Do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the two things that we really need are the ability to do a blood test to prove that you've had it. Mm-hmm. Right. That would be pretty cool, which you can do that for things like the measles or mono or other viruses, right? They're called titers, where you do blood work and it proves that you have antibodies to that specific virus.
Okay.
So supposedly that's not that far away. That would be super helpful, because then you could say, yeah, back in January when I was sick and not feeling great, I wonder if I had it. Well, turns out you did.
Yeah.
So that all of a sudden changes a lot of things, because it looks like from all the data that is out there so far, it doesn't seem like you're going to get it again. So imagine, like, if you could prove to healthcare workers, look, you've had this, you can go take care of these patients and you don't have to be afraid that you're going to get it again, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, like I said, all those people walking around thinking they might have had it, you can prove that they did. Yeah. So if you can do that, and if you at the same time can actually rapidly test people who show symptoms, you could start to envision a world where you could let people get back to their life, right? Because you could say, at the very first sign of symptoms, you must get tested. And if you do that and you then quarantine for 2 weeks, you're going to ideally protect the people that could really get sick and are vulnerable. You could also do a test to prove all the people that have already had it. So they could say, look, I have my, here's my test. I already had it. I'm good. And you can continue to really protect the most vulnerable people.
Yeah. You can also,
problem is we don't have any, we have none of those things.
We don't have those things. Yeah. Right. You would also be able to say, hey, you don't have it. This is your seasonal allergies. Go ahead and keep moving,
Right.
Yeah. So the tests, I keep hearing, listen, it's politics, right? So I understand, like, we've got this many tests out here, but I was like, yeah, that seems like 25 million too few. Isn't that a lot?
The reality is we are living in New Jersey, which is the second hardest hit state right now after New York. And if you think you have it, it is very hard to get a test unless you are really sick. Yeah. I have friends who work in the emergency rooms of children's hospitals up and down the East Coast, and they say, I can't test you unless you're like about to get admitted to the hospital.
Yeah.
So yes, there are pop-up sites. Every once in a while you hear, oh, there's a site by the Quaker Bridge Mall. There's a site by this, whatever. But the problem is that they run out of test kits quickly. And so it's just, you cannot get tested right now easily, right, unless you are about to go into the hospital.
I have a friend who was tested in Ohio, and she said, first of all, not pleasant having the swab put in her nose. She had a bloody nose when it was over, and then she got a call that said that the lab spilled her sample and she had to come back again.
Yeah, so people don't realize the test is, the one that is used most frequently is a nasopharyngeal swab. So that's exactly what it sounds like, in your nose and into the back of your throat. Yeah. So it's not just like, touch the inside of your nostril. It's, let's see if I can touch your tonsil through your nose.
Which is not a sentence you thought anybody was going to ever speak to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is not pleasant, but that's the kind of sample you have to get. And yes, there's a potential for a bloody nose. There's a potential they lose it. I've heard multiple stories about people getting tested and they never even get the result because it gets lost.
Right. Yeah. It's
just not what it should be.
Yeah. It's crazy right now. They are working on tests, like fast tests that seem like, have you heard that they're coming around?
We get stuff, I get emails from companies that are claiming that they're going to have it soon. But it's not anywhere near like, hey, I can drive by and get my nose swabbed and find out 10 minutes later that I'm positive or negative.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's anywhere close.
When
That's what they did everywhere else in the world.
When you get contacted like that, because you're the president of your practice, is that a salesperson trying to get the head of the line? Like, is that a little bit of salesmanship going on sometimes?
It depends. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's like blast emails that are going out to anyone who's in their system. Sometimes it's a sales thing. Sometimes it's, usually the sales things come more from like the reps that we deal with, and they go right to our lab.
Okay.
But we would know if there was an ability to get people tested rapidly, that would be the biggest story on the news.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't exist right now.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. It's I always think when people they'll say like, is there a cure for type 1 diabetes? I'd say, you don't have to track it every day. If it happens, you'll find out.
Right. Yeah. It's not like, oh my God, you found it on Facebook? And sent it around? I can't believe you found it before anyone else.
I can't believe I lived 6 years longer with this than I had to because I just didn't know they cured it. Yeah. You'll hear.
Right.
It's hard not to be anxious though. I mean, how are you doing with, you're going out there, you're going to work. Is your wife leaving the house?
Very, very, very infrequently.
Is there any stir crazy happening yet?
Like go to like the supermarket, buy 10 things and get out of there as fast as you can, that sort of thing. But like even at work, I mean, I am spending most of the day with the door closed in my office doing telehealth, seeing a handful of well patients. Nothing like what we would be typically doing.
Right. Do you miss it? Like the contact with people?
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, I think for all of us, it's really strange, especially like doing what I do, where you spend all day long talking to people face to face, right? So it's just weird when now at least with telehealth, you can see some people, but it's just bizarre. Like I think the mental health aspect of this, not just for, healthcare workers, but anyone who's in any kind of a position where you work with people face to face.
Yeah.
It's just weird to turn all of that off. I mean, we're meant to be social people, and it's bizarre.
I agree. I also think that if you explode it out into the future, like you hear people say nobody's gonna have to go to work anymore, and I think, well, then what are all those buildings for? What are we gonna do with them? And what are they? Vines gonna grow over top of them? We're all just gonna live in our domiciles from now on. What about people who don't? Like, I'm in a house. I have a room where I make a podcast. Some people live in a room this size, so what about those people? You can't expect a human being to stay in a New York City apartment every day, all day long, forever and ever. Like, that's not okay.
No, I mean, I think clearly, like, when this is over, however it ends, people are going to go back to work, and they're going to return to some semblance of normalcy. But I do think that it is made blatantly obvious a bunch of things, like a bunch of the travel that people do for work is a total waste of time.
Right.
You can accomplish it now on a computer. There are a lot of people that have been trying to get jobs where they could work from home, either because they're, physically disabled, or they have some kind of a condition where they can't get into an office, and they've been denied those opportunities, and clearly they could do it from home. Right. So I think it's going to change a lot. But you're right. I mean, people are still going to have to go, like people, especially that are in service industries. How are you supposed to work in a restaurant or a hotel from your house? Or how are you supposed to cut hair or, clean teeth or see patients or whatever it is? You can't do that from your house 100% of the time.
No, and I mean, there's some things, like, don't get me wrong. I want to go to a baseball game. I've never wanted to go to a baseball game so badly in my life as I have in the last 3 weeks. But they're not going to just, like, sports aren't just going to become a thing that happens in front of an empty building. You know what I mean? Right. I know they're talking about it now, but it's not going like you've heard the NBA talk about, like, maybe we'll go to Las Vegas and just hold a tournament. My son's like, you mean like an AAU tournament? Like, you just all show up at the same place and play? And I'm like, I think that's what they're talking about, And he's like,
I mean, I think if anything, it might, accelerate some of this esports stuff that people are talking about, because that you could play from from your couch. But no, I mean, look, I think at some point you're going to have a return to society that's going to look a little different. But some of these things are going to either they're going to come back or they're going to go away altogether.
Right. You're going to find out what you don't care about all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I think I saw somebody recently that I know, and their very first statement to me was, "Hey, are the divorce rates going up?" And I said, "Is this a personal commentary on how it's going at your house?"
Yeah. Yeah, I saw something funny online that just said in 9 months we're either going to have a lot of babies or a lot of justifiable homicides because the parents are going to kill their children and kill each other. Like people are just going bananas. I mean, there's only I don't care how big your house is. There's only so much room when you have
to get away.
3 large children.
Yeah.
Like at some point you need to get away from each other.
Yeah. And people are just getting, like I said this morning, I said to everybody, listen, the weekend's almost here. We have to find something mindless to just do, like that isn't just passing time. Like we're gonna have to get together, and I don't care what it is, and I don't know how to figure that out. We're not leaving that. I mean, maybe it'll be nice enough we can go outside a little bit, on our property, but we can't just keep doing this over and over and over and over again. Like this.
I've been saying the same. It's funny that you say that because I have been saying the exact same thing. Have you ever felt like time moves more slowly than it's moving these last 3 weeks? I mean, like you and I sat, it wasn't even 3 weeks ago.
Right.
It feels like it's been 6 months. I mean, the days, the hours crawl by, the days go slow, you're stressed and anxious. And then the evening comes and you're like, all right, well, now I guess we watch different TV. I mean, what are you supposed to be doing differently on the evening or, on the weekend?
Well, no,
it's unbelievable.
Zero lie. I took the dogs out yesterday morning after I fed them. My neighbor's taking the recycling down to the street. And I said to her, why are you doing that? And she goes, I don't know. It's out at other people's houses. And I was like, oh, all right. So sometimes there's a mass hysteria that happens around recycling. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Someone gets the day wrong, puts the recycling out, and everyone on the street's like, oh my God, it must be the recycling day. And I didn't know. So I'm like, yeah, all right. So I took my recycling down. I come back in the house. I text my neighbor on the other side. I go, why did I just take my recycling down? And he goes, it's recycling day. And I said, it's Friday. And he goes, dude, it's Wednesday. And I went, oh, sorry to bother you. I was not kidding. I don't usually misunderstand what day it is. Friday to Wednesday. I had no context for what day it was. It just didn't matter anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's exactly right. And I think people, there's a certain rhythm to our lives that we've all gotten so used to where for most people, you work your 5 days and then you have your 2 days off. I mean, a lot of us work weekends and evenings and things like that, but that's the general pattern of our society. And I don't know how long we can go without any real distinction between what day it is.
Some sort of schedule.
For so many people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had the strangest feeling, like I said, leaving the grocery store today. Like I'm not depressed. I'm like, I haven't been overwhelmed by 3 weeks in my house, but I was like, what's the point of all this if I can't talk to people? And like, what am I doing? I'm just staying inside till I have to go run and get a piece of chicken again. Like that can't be everything,
No, I know. I mean, look, I am relatively hopeful that we are going to start to see the case number and the hospitalizations and all that start to kind of peak and then start to, head downward. And it's going to be a big sort of sigh of relief once you start seeing that. I mean, if you look at like what's going on in California, like it's very interesting when you compare California to New York. New York is very densely populated. Obviously, you have New York City, which is the most densely populated city in the country. And so they really had no way out of this. Like they were going to get hit no matter what. California enacted really tough measures pretty early on. And if you look, there's some evidence that it may actually be working. Like the cases, these people that are getting sick are quarantined off and are not getting other people sick.
Right.
So that's how it's really starting to come down. And if you can get it down enough, then you can really start to think about, well, what's it going to be like when, the number of new cases per day is like 10 and not, a couple thousand.
Yeah. I'll tell you, that's no better, proven than when you look at New Jersey, how the deaths in New Jersey are clustered in just towns. You know what I mean? Like it's, like, oh, do you live in Morris? 40 people died here. Like, wow, really? Like that's super interesting. And
yeah, I think that's just because they probably, if you can go through Morris and test every person, you'd find that 4,000 people have it in Morris, or probably 10,000 people have it.
And if you look
so
further,
they're unfortunate further away you get, less of it.
And you'll also find, I bet, that people in like New Jersey's obviously like we're basically a bedroom community for New York and North Jersey, right? Like everybody leaves New York and goes to New Jersey and goes home. And so New York and New Jersey might as well be the same thing for this situation, honestly, because the people so freely go back and forth.
And you can see that because the further north you get, the more, if you're in Bergen County right now, you might as well be in Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Right. Now, I'm interested to see what happens in places like California that button it up quickly. I'm also, I was wondering what you thought about, did you see the cruise ship that nobody will let port anywhere?
Yeah. So Florida apparently is going to take them now.
Last night they were saying they were just going to take the Floridians off of it. Have you heard more since then?
So this morning I heard that the governor of Florida said that he had assurances from one or two healthcare systems in that area that they could handle the volume. Mm-hmm. I suspect that they tested the people on the ship and they figured out who actually has it. And they said, oh, well, maybe that's not as bad as we thought. So they're going to take off the people that are sick.
Yeah. No, I know. That was,
I think honestly, if you get on a cruise ship now and that cruise gets stuck, I mean, I think there's a point of personal responsibility here. Like, who in their right mind would get on a cruise ship right now?
Yeah.
With what's going on.
No.
When did that cruise leave and where did it leave from?
Right.
That's what I don't get.
Yeah.
No one takes a 3-week cruise to Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
Right. So it had to have left in the last 10 to 14 days. Like, who in their right mind would get on a cruise ship right now? I don't get it.
When we were a young family, we took a cruise and Cole was in the pool and then suddenly everyone was rushed out of the pool. The water was drained out of the pool. I noticed a little human poo in the middle of it that a guy went in, cleaned it out. And at that moment I turned to Kelly and I was like, well, we're not doing this again. I've never been somewhere before where this happens. So let's not go to places where stuff like this happens. It's just,
I just think that industry is going to be in serious trouble. Like, I just can't imagine once people can travel again, if you had to rank the types of trips you could take, I can't imagine people are going to say, sign me up for the next cruise. I mean, that's not a statement against any particular cruise line or anything, but just the idea of being on a enclosed, basically a hotel at sea with hundreds of people with potential for illness like this, it just doesn't seem rational.
I keep I'm wondering if, one of the airlines is going to not go out of business too, like at some point.
Oh, they definitely. Yeah. I think they definitely are, unless they've managed to get the money from the government quickly.
Yeah. In the past, they folded together at times in the past. Am I remembering that right?
I think so. Like, I mean, some of these airlines have been different things. Like, remember Eastern Airlines and so who knows? I mean, so much of that industry is, I think they operate on margins that aren't as big as you might think they are. Right. And so you do something like this to them and it's just devastating. Yeah. Although I do find it interesting that when the oil spike happened a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, there was they started charging people fuel tax because the gas prices were so high. I don't hear anything about them pulling the fuel taxes off now. Gas costs $2 a gallon again.
You can't suddenly fly somewhere for $55. I mean,
right.
Listen, in fairness, we were just slightly ahead of this whole thing happening when I was getting back out of Florida when Cole was playing, and I flew home from Florida to Newark, just me and 9 other people on a jet.
Yeah.
I mean, there ain't no money being made there.
It's interesting. Like, somebody asked Andrew Cuomo about why don't they shut down the airports in New York? And he said, first of all, it's a very difficult thing to do because you need goods to come in. You need healthcare workers coming back and forth. But this is what he said the other day. Apparently the number of passengers traveling in and out of the New York City airports of Newark, JFK, LaGuardia, down 95%.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, whether they're open or not, nobody's in the airport anyway. So what difference does it make?
It's probably the safest place now.
Yeah.
There's no one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So what would you say if I told you that last weekend I got up in the morning and I was fixing something around the house and I found myself missing a piece that I needed? And I thought like that. I thought no one will be at like Lowe's. I'll go there. It'll be me and the guy working there. And when I got there, the parking lot was so full, I turned around and went home. Like, do you think there's sort of like I'm starting to believe that there's like that I think as humans, we set like false timelines for things. Like, I'll understand this better in a month, a week, a year. Like we do that to ourselves for no reason. I talk about it on here all the time. When Arden was diagnosed, I thought, well, a year and I'll understand it better. And then when I didn't understand it better in a year, I actually said to myself, well, it probably takes 2 years. Like, why doesn't it take 17 and a half months? You know what I mean? Like, so I wondered if people hadn't woken up one Sunday morning and been like, it's been a couple of weeks. This is probably okay now. Like it was interesting, but I went home.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people that do work outside, like especially contractors that, are mostly outdoors.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you see this too driving around, but the landscape guys are all out and doing their thing. Right. So I think maybe they have a little bit of a false sense of security because they think, oh, I'm doing a project outdoors. I got to get my equipment for the day. You hope that they're keeping apart from their coworkers, but certainly seems a lot different than people that are working in office buildings or, getting furloughed by companies because the companies are basically almost going out of business.
Right.
It does seem like that industry, for whatever reason, maybe these guys are outdoors a lot more. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It threw me off. And then I actually, I basically had a conversation with myself on the way home because the first thought in my head was, what are all these people doing here? And then I said, oh yeah, you're one of them. So I at least caught myself in time and sent myself home. But, as I was being, morally outraged about their not being concerned, I was like, oh yeah, I just did the same thing. But maybe we all thought the same thing. Like, oh, there won't be anybody there. This will be completely okay. But
yeah, I've had a bunch of conversations still with people asking like, oh, what do you think about doing this? What do you think about doing that? And I think the answer has just got to be the same. Are you going to be within 6 feet of a person for more than 10 minutes?
Yeah.
The answer to that is definitely. Then don't do it.
Right.
If you think, well, probably not, I'm not really sure, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Now, have you heard today? I went downstairs and Kelly told me they're starting to talk about it maybe being more airborne than they thought. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter is without a doubt the most accurate blood glucose meter my daughter has ever used. Due respect to all the ones in the past, this one is the bomb diggity. You might even be eligible to get an absolutely free meter, and you can check that out at contournext1.com. Click on the link, get a free Contour Next One meter at the top of the page, and you'll know soon enough. Even if you're not eligible for the free meter, blood glucose meters aren't exactly that expensive, especially if you have insurance. And making the switch to this specific meter, the Contour Next One, in my opinion, would be a great move. It's small, lightweight, fits in your hand nice, has a bright light for nighttime testing, and the strips are terrific because if you miss the first time with the blood, you can go back in and get a resample without getting results that aren't accurate or wasting a test strip. The crowning jewel to this meter is the accuracy. It is just rock solid accurate. Best I've ever seen. If you want, there's actually a great app that goes with the meter available for Apple or Android. But, just head over to contournext1.com and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And when you're done there, check out touchedbytype1.org. Head over, look into their programs, how to support them, how to benefit from what they do. touchedbytype1.org. There are links to all of the sponsors right there in the show notes of your podcast player, or you could head over to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on the links that are there. They're starting to talk about it maybe being more airborne than they thought.
So this has been going on since China was the first one really dealing with it. And, I heard some interesting stuff today that they really don't think it is airborne.
Okay.
I think it's just really infectious. So I think you can get confused by that because, airborne means like I live in a building and my ductwork connects to the apartment above me. Mm-hmm. I can get it from the person above me. That's really what airborne is.
Okay.
There's no evidence that this can do that. I think this is by droplets. So I sneeze and you walk into the path of my droplets. They land on your face. You can get it. If it's a particularly infectious agent, it's easy to transmit it that way. Sometimes it's harder. Like this is a pretty hardy virus. You sneeze onto a surface and it can live there for a while, right. Touch the surface and you get it, like we were talking about last time. But airborne really means like I got it through my air conditioning vent
like
from another person.
Exactly
like Legionnaires, okay. Right?
All right, yeah. So it's tough because it really is tough because look at you and I are talking about this. A lot of people listen to us talk about this, and we are. I'm me. I shouldn't be telling anybody anything. You're at least a doctor, but because of the internet, everyone's got the ability, and all you have to do is misuse the wrong word. And then the person who understands the word correctly hears it and says, "Oh, I heard it was airborne," and that's it. It's a little dangerous. It's why I would like it if the information would come out, in easily understood segments on a daily. It would be nice if somebody just came out and ran through it in a way everybody could understand, instead of you having to pick through all this information and decide what's right.
Well, and I think the internet has made that obviously 1,000 times worse, and social media on top of that, because you end up tending to look at sites where the opinions of the people that you're looking at match what you already believe. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those people may not be experts on what you're reading about. It's why the messaging that comes from the top has to be clear and concise and accurate and not speculation.
Right.
And they're from the beginning, from January, even going back to probably the end of December, you heard tons of speculation. It's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be like the flu. Why do we, It's stuff that just wasn't based on in reality, instead of just saying, we're not 100% sure yet. This is what we're seeing. This is what we think. But when you dismiss stuff, people like to hear that, because they're like, well, that sounds great. It's not going to be a big deal.
I can tell you, as a person who communicates with people, I've done it in writing, and you'd think you make something 100% clear in writing, there's no way someone will misunderstand this or take it wrong, and then they do. And then you look back at what you wrote and think, no, this is unmistakably clear. But it doesn't mean someone won't mishear it. I thought when I moved to talking, that would completely go away, but it doesn't. You can't say, you have to say, you can't say we think this is going to be something that lasts 10 days, because what a person hears is this is only going to last 10 days. They drop the I think, the qualifier. It doesn't, I think people hear what they want to hear very often.
Yeah, I think they bring their own beliefs into the conversation. Right. And then those beliefs kind of shape the words that they're bringing in. Mm-hmm. And there's also, it's very much in a person's best interest to believe what they would like to believe, because it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Right. So like if I hear something on the news and it sounds like, oh my God, they might actually have a vaccine, I'm going to say, all right, I have to be a little skeptical because these things take time, but wow, that would be amazing if and then within 5 minutes, 5 people will text me, oh my God, did you hear there was a vaccine? And the truth is,
right, that's
not exactly what they said. Mm-hmm. They just said there's now a study about a vaccine.
I'll tell you, to put this in context for people living with diabetes, every time you hear a mouse has been cured from type 1 diabetes, that really should make you think, not, oh, wow, there's almost a cure for humans. What it should make you think is, I should probably try to find a way to become a mouse, because, there's so, and you don't realize sometimes, that's why I asked you about the sales earlier, because there's a thing I call cure season around type 1, where researchers float their research looking for more money to continue their research. And the way they get that money is by saying, oh, we're hot on the trail of a cure, and to your point, when you hear that, and you or your kid or somebody you love is living with it, you think, oh gosh, and it lifts you up a little bit, makes you feel like you're close to something, which I've always found to be unfair. I don't like it when people do that. And so, when we hear this information like, oh, it's going to go away, or back when he said, there's only 15 cases, there'll be none soon. I was like, that's not even how math works. Right. But for every person that heard that and thought, that's not right, there was an equal amount of people who heard that and thought, oh, great, this will be over in a week.
Yeah, it's really kind of an interesting study in so many different things. But one of them is definitely this mass kind of communication and messaging and just leadership, I think. And there's a real benefit to being optimistic and sort of aspirational, and trying to get people to understand that there is going to be another side of this. We're not going to be stuck in this forever. Right. There is a way out of it. Just because we can't see that way for sure yet doesn't mean that, that there's not a way, but there's a fine line between optimism and that sort of can-do spirit, and we all need to pull together, and just talking in a way that is purely what you hope might happen, and you have no basis for making those statements other than this is just what you wish for. Right. And I think if it's a fifth grader making comments like that, you excuse it, because you're like, look, I understand. You really want to go back to school and be with your friends. And it's good to say, oh, no, we're going to be back on May 1st, and to believe that, that's fine. But if you're like the superintendent and that's how you're talking to your students, you probably aren't going to keep your job as superintendent much longer because you're just not being rational or truthful.
Right.
And I think there's, the best leadership skill is actually telling people the truth. They'll respect you more if you're honest with them than if you are just making stuff up because it makes everyone feel better.
Yeah, I'm seeing that in a couple of places that just kept setting these arbitrary 2-week dates. Like, we'll see in 2 weeks. Finally, they're like, listen, we'll let you know when it comes back. Okay. Like, let's stop. Let's stop pretending it's going to be 2 weeks from now. I'm a big fan of speaking to people like that. It's also important to remember that everybody doesn't feel or hear the way you do. Like, for me, if I told you how I thought about this, you'd laugh. It's ridiculous. It's either going to be okay or it's not. That's literally how I think of this. It's either is or it isn't. If it is, great. If it's not, what am I going to do about it? But I don't have anxiety. I don't live with anxiety. I don't live with that kind of stuff. I have perspective. I tell people all the time, like, you give your kid an incurable disease. It'll change your perspective on the world. Like, I can't sit around and worry about things I don't have sway over,
I think one of the challenges with this is that there's no escape from it. Like, if you turn the TV on and you want to just watch the news about anything else, you can't find,
right.
It's impossible. I was driving today and I was flipping through the stations and I don't even know what channel it was, but they were clearly playing a segment that had been recorded like 4 weeks ago about some guy's book that, he wrote, and it was whatever it was. But I'm listening to this thinking there is no chance they filmed this like last week. This has to be from a month ago. And the difference, just like, they sounded like, oh, this is a great theoretical topic to be talking about. What an interesting book. And I'm thinking to myself, every person who's stopped at this channel just turned it off because it seems like it's divorced from reality. Mm-hmm. Our reality now is this all the time. It's all you talk about with people that you like. Even if you do a Zoom happy hour and you're hanging out with your 9 friends, they could be friends from college or friends from down the street. This is all you're talking about all the time. There's no escape from it.
Yeah. There's a real, there's a line where you can feel it change. Like, it just, and I don't want to say it's never the same again, just that reality is colored differently now because you have this new experience. Before today, what's happening has only been, in most people's minds, the plot of a movie. Do you know what I mean? And now they're seeing it happen. Now they recognize it's true. Now there's researchers who are probably walking around going, I've been trying to say this to you. Nobody's listening to me. But, I think it's good that, not everybody needs to walk around with that weight all the time. But I think forever moving forward, it'll color the way you feel until you generation out of it and get to that point where, you find people who are like, don't remember 9/11 because they were born when it happened or something like that.
I think that's the closest parallel for us that we can think about is 9/11. But the difference with 9/11, like, my feeling about, I was just talking about this with somebody else, like, on 9/11, I remember trying to get in touch with my wife who was working in the city. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, I was on my cell phone and I was talking to one of my coworkers, and I went outside onto my deck. And as I was standing on my deck, this was probably like maybe 45 minutes after the second tower got hit.
Right.
So before the towers fell, but after the second one got hit. And I'm standing outside and I'm talking like, what in the world is going on? And all of a sudden I saw like 3 fighter jets fly overhead that were clearly coming from the south to go fly over New York. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've never seen anything move so fast in my life, right overhead. And I remember thinking to myself, this is insane. Like, are we literally, is the whole country under attack? And there were all those stories of other planes, and there's all that sense of like, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
This is that, but it's been going on for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
right.
I mean, in all seriousness, like, we are hearing every day about
your head constantly.
Yeah. And you're like, well, who's the next famous person you're going to hear about that gets sick? And who's like an older famous person who you're going to read about tomorrow who passed away from complications from this? And oh my God, did you hear so-and-so's brother is in the hospital with it? And so it's like closing in because there's so many more cases.
Yeah.
I think that is what's causing this incredible level of anxiety. Right. But it's like nothing our generation has ever seen. And I mean, I guess this is what it must have felt like during the Second World War, except that went on for years.
Right.
And you had people that you cared about overseas fighting, and you never heard from them. You didn't know what was going on.
And I don't know what you can do about it too. Like, have you ever heard the theory that Irish people are more susceptible to depression because of the potato famine? You ever looked at that? Like that concept that they were so sad for so long that it got burned into their DNA. And I don't know if I believe that, but I mean, in the short term, this is your reality all of a sudden. It's hard to,
I think
think of something else.
Yeah, I mean, just there's so many things about the way we live as a people that I think they're just going to change unless there's a vaccine really soon, or a treatment that's going to be shown to be that basically can just eradicate this, like the way that we did with smallpox, things like that, where there's, where there's a vaccine that's that effective that you can say coronavirus is gone. There's going to be other pandemics. I mean, this is not going to be the only time in our lives we have to deal with something like this, unfortunately.
Right. I it's funny. I think there's a real opportunity for like a worldwide celebration if something like that could happen. It could be a real unifying thing. I've also noticed my wife wanted to buy a used car. Like, right, she's been looking at these little weird cars that nobody has. They're not expensive. And she's like, this is what I want. It's all she could talk about. And this came up. I have not heard about that car one time. The other thing that I'm seeing happen, which is super interesting, is what virtue signaling is, right? Like, you say something on Facebook to prove to everybody the right thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's that's all gone. Like, nobody's got any time for any first world nonsense. They're all just worried about this. Like, all this, I was saying to my son, you didn't realize how good your life was and how much free time you had to fill with like other stuff because you weren't worried about anything. Like everything was just going the way you wanted it to.
I mean, it does seem like there's still a small group of people that think they have all the answers with this.
Yeah.
Like, I saw a comment on social media the other day where someone was trying to argue that they don't have COVID, they have coronavirus. Like, what? Like, that person, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it's the same thing. This coronavirus, it's called COVID-19 because it was from 2019 where they first discovered it. It's the same exact thing. Literally the same exact thing. I'm like, how could you? And I saw and I didn't engage in it. I was just reading it, but people going back and forth with this theory that just because you have a coronavirus infection with this particular coronavirus, it doesn't mean you have COVID. Like, that is just completely not the truth.
Right.
So there's still this weird, I mean, some of it too is, I guess, political, but this stuff with like going after some of Trump's advisors that are trying to play it straight. I don't know if you saw that stuff about Fauci, but apparently there's been people that are like after him and attacking him because he touched his forehead during one of the press conferences. It looked like he was unhappy with something someone else was saying.
Right.
So they're attacking him like with this fury that he needs. He's actually now getting protection from the government. I don't know if you saw that.
For trying to help us all stay alive.
There's an element of some of this stuff, but you're right. I mean, I think there's much less of this holier than thou sanctimonious nonsense that goes on online where you're like, enough with your showing us how smart you are about everything. Yeah. There's less of that.
Yeah. And because, if you step back and watch one of those conversations like you were talking about, you see 10, 12, 15 people come in, they're all saying something different. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that person's right. And then you think that's how everybody feels about this. Like, maybe I actually know that person's right. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just agree with them, like you were saying. So there's literally no benefit. It either serves to make you upset or serves to make you feel like, I'm right about this. But anyway, there's a lot less of it. I think people are focused now on core survival ideas, and it's different. It's different now thinking about, do I want to risk getting sick? Do I need a chicken breast bad enough to risk getting sick? Maybe that'll help moving forward. I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be 3 weeks. There'll be a flag that goes up. This thing's all over, and everybody will just go back to the way it was. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, right? I mean, like if all of a sudden tomorrow morning we woke up and they said, good news, it looks like this virus is weakening every time it jumps, and each virus can only infect X number of people, so it's gonna die out. Like, that's what the studies show. And then, and they said, and all our models show that within 2 weeks that's gonna happen. I think 2 weeks later you would have like Bourbon Street would be packed, the beaches in Fort Lauderdale would be packed, people would be pouring beers on each other's heads. It would be like the biggest celebration ever. And then 24 hours later, they'd be arguing online about nonsense and, fighting over different things at the grocery store and whatever. So it's hard to know. I mean, I really hope it's a short-lived thing. I guess the impact it has on everyone will be something we'll have to watch over time.
Well, what I've learned is that what you just said, where you were clearly saying, let me make up a scenario and tell you how it maybe end. Somebody just heard that and heard, oh, this is all going to be over in 2 weeks because the disease it can't replicate at the same like power, and it just dies out. It's
As I was saying it, I was thinking to myself, you should just edit that whole part out because now someone's going to hear just that piece and go, oh my God, that doctor that was talking to him said that it's not going to be bad at all. That's not what I'm saying.
No. And if, I know, but you could, you listen away for a second, you're listening while you're cleaning or something. I see it happen a lot. It's really, I'll get notes, but like, you said this, and I'll think to myself, no, I didn't. And then they're like, no, right here. And I go look, and I'm like, you got to listen to that again. It's not what I said. And then they'll, oh yeah, I got it. Thanks.
The really amazing thing about that is, so that's someone accidentally just not listening to the whole segment, right? You just pick up, but you can see how it's so easy to just take something that someone says out of context and then use it for your own benefit.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's so many times where you hear a 1-sentence clip of something, and it's completely like that clip I just said. If you would just pull that out and say, well, there's this guy saying that it's going to be nothing, like that can be manipulated so easily. It's ridiculous,
right.
Especially now with social media.
Yeah. Oh no, please. There'll be an animatronic you saying it. It's
right.
It'll look more real than you. Your kids will look at it and think that's definitely him.
Right. Exactly.
Your children are pretty active people. Is this my son he's getting to Cage Tiger. Like he's trying to like dull his mind with video games, and he's keeping up with his college work, which by the way, I explained to him how much the semester cost, and I didn't care what room he was in. I expected the same grades.
Yeah.
But he needs it to get warm. Like he just wants to go throw a ball, or he's like, can we just go to a field and hit or something? Like I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are the same way. My older two they're high school age, so they're actually decently busy with their work. Like their school's doing a pretty good job with their online schooling. It's actually it mirrors pretty well what they'd be doing in the classroom because their classes are small, so they have like real Zoom lectures and they have homework and assignments and assessments and stuff. My daughter's school is not quite as much just because she's only in 7th grade, so she gets done quickly. In terms of the physical piece of it, yeah, I've been trying to encourage them, like, get yourself outside as much as you can. My older one runs, so he's been still running. I think he still has a hope that the season is not completely lost, but if nothing else, he's getting ready for college. But the other two are like, they're used to going from a basketball practice to a baseball practice or a softball practice or whatever. And they're like not doing much. My daughter's softball program just started these virtual sessions where they're doing like 45 minutes of conditioning 2 or 3 times a week on Zoom. And they're going to do like virtual hitting sessions where they're going to, try to do something, but it's not the same.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you could learn to hit a baseball like that, I'd be Stan Musial. So
it's hard to play softball by yourself. Right? Maybe basketball, but so, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. It's a combination of their bodies aren't moving and they're not engaging in the same way. I mean, could you imagine what this would be like, say 15 years ago with no Zoom meetings and no FaceTime and no cell phones, like the way we have them now, where you can, see a picture of the person you're talking to? Imagine the isolation in that scenario. It'd be unreal. Like if you had to turn on the nightly news to find out what the latest is.
Yeah, to sit around 24 hours to get the new update.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to find it. I heard last night that in France, they were so worried about domestic violence that they basically put a safe word into play, and you could walk into any pharmacy and say that word and someone would collect you. Like to get you, because think about that. If you're a victim of domestic violence, this thing has now locked you in the room you least want to be in the entire world with no way to get out. And I thought that's pretty smart.
One of my partners actually had to put a post up on Facebook about keeping your kids safe at home for the same reason. These kids that are in kind of dangerous households, potentially abusive parents, whether it's emotional or physical, and spouses too. I mean, this is a nightmare. They can't go anywhere to escape any of it. It's just a nightmare.
I think too about the kids so my brother's in Wisconsin, and he was changing jobs, and he had a couple of weeks, between jobs, and he thought, I'm going to keep doing something. So he took this job delivering lunches for like a local school. And within 2 days of doing it, he goes, Scott, some of these kids take the lunch on Monday morning, the food I bring them on Monday morning, and they tell me they haven't eaten since the thing I gave them on Friday. And he's like, and now they're all like, so they kept doing it. They're still taking the meals to these places, and people are showing up. I'm like, well, what about places that aren't? Are these kids just at home and nobody's feeding them?
So that was one of the big reasons why New York didn't close their schools so fast.
Oh, really?
Is because they were, that's what I read, that they were really concerned about the kids on the lunch program.
Yeah.
So there were stories about bus drivers trying to drive their route with the kids' lunches to drop them off. But as you can imagine, that's super inefficient.
Yeah. A school bus to deliver lunches is not going to work. But yeah, there's just, my point is that there's a lot that impacts people's lives that most of us wouldn't think about, and it's not
you're
as
right.
easy as, as all.
I mean, I've been saying it for a while, but like one of the things I'm worried about is just what is going to happen to the economy, and not the economy in terms of like the numbers you read, but just, there's a certain dignity in getting up every day and going to work and like doing what you do, getting paid for it, being able to support your family, having, food for your kids to eat. Like there's going to be times pretty soon when people are deciding, do I eat this or I give it to my kid?
Right.
And I just don't know how as a society you can maintain this level of closed offness to everything before people are going to get desperate, And I know that there's been 3 pieces of legislation now, and there's even rumblings about a 4th, but at some point, like I'm nervous that people are going to really get desperate. Right. And I don't know what that looks like in certain parts of the country. I want to find out. Actually every part of the country. It's not confined to one area.
No, I know. I mean, you see, listen, obviously people are thinking about it. You want to see a long line still, look at a gun shop. Like people are in lines to buy guns. There are people who you never would have thought of owning a gun in their lives who are out trying to find one because they're extrapolating out 3 months and thinking this is going to get upside down and I can't protect myself. Even when you said what you just said, I thought, we're going to see soup lines again. And I thought, no, we're not, because we can't get in line next to each other. So that won't happen.
Well, right. I mean, look, like I think one of the things I keep thinking about is you see all this craziness with the toilet paper, and that's like the perfect like panic buying moment, right? So some people got nervous that they're going to get stuck in the house, so they started buying a lot of toilet paper. So then other people saw those people buying toilet paper and said, "Oh no, they're going to buy up all the toilet paper. I need to go buy a lot of toilet paper." And then by the time you got to like the 3rd round of that, there was no more toilet paper.
Right.
So that's fine right now because you're buying toilet paper and you can afford to buy it. But what happens when you can't afford to buy the toilet paper anymore? Mm-hmm. Then what?
Yeah. Then what are you gonna do? No, I mean it's a slippery slope. Like I've said before, I those zombie TV shows, they write themselves. It's not hard to sit into a room and extrapolate out what happens when people get desperate. And it's, as I'm sitting here, I've never thought about this once, but I'm like, federalize the grocery stores. Just make food free for a while. Everybody gets, enough to get them by, and it keeps that kind of hope. But like you said too, like you want to be able to pay for it yourself. And at some point that'll feel desperate to you. Like, I don't want it to be handed this food every time. You just turn into you turn into a robot at some point. Like, I think that life is in the, it's in the moments, right? It's not the things you do, it's the things you do in between those things. It's,
Yeah, I mean, look, I think like we're talking scenarios where this goes on and never stops for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think especially when you look at what's going on in China and parts of Italy that got absolutely walloped with this, they're starting to come back. I mean, if you look at like Wuhan now, they are more worried about cases coming in from the outside than cases from within Wuhan.
Yeah. Even
though like the social distancing stuff started way too late, the testing is not anywhere near where it should be. We don't have the ability to prove someone had it. At some point, you're going to get into a situation where the number of new cases is significantly dropping.
Right.
And as it drops, the comfort level with people returning to normal is going to come back. It's just a question of when is that going to happen?
And I didn't mean to say I thought it was going to happen. I meant to say that in enough people's heads that they're thinking about it. Like they're
I know. I mean, look, I just gave that ridiculous toilet paper story, right? So I'm thinking about it too.
Right.
I think the reality though is we're not going to get to that point.
Right.
Like I just can't believe in the United States of America in 2020, we're going to be at a point where we're like, no one can afford a roll of toilet paper anymore. Like I just can't imagine that's going to happen.
You're not going to be sharing a loaf of bread for 3 days. I don't think so either. I just think that it's, I've talked to enough people who have anxiety issues now, and I know that something like this it just shoots them off like a rocket. Like they were doing, like back when I was talking about everything just goes your way, they were struggling then. You know.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, think of it's the worst case scenario for people with anxiety.
Right.
You know, even if you want to say just 1 hour at a time, take it one day at a time, all that kind of stuff, that's fine. Except that you don't even know what's going to happen. So,
right.
You know, you can make yourself bananas. And then if you try to think a week or two out, or you try to think, oh, you know, my kid's supposed to go back to college in the fall. Are they going to be able to go or not? I'm hearing rumor. Like you literally can make yourself insane, and there's no distraction. That's the problem.
Yeah. The only thing to distract you is more thoughts like this. Like I actually thought, I had the conscious thought this morning that since my son has been 3.5 years old, he's been playing baseball. And since he's in about 9, he's been telling me he's going to play in college. And now he's there and they canceled the college baseball season. Are they going to cancel the next one? Was my next thought. Did he do all that for
exactly
nothing?
Right.
You know, like,
yeah.
You know, what else have we all done for nothing?
It's so true. Like, I mean, I think when they closed the schools for a couple of weeks, everyone was saying, oh, they'll probably close them till like Easter, or they'll close them through spring break, and then they'll get back after break. And then it was sort of like, well, it's only getting worse. So why in the world are they going to get back? So now everyone's like, well, they're probably just going to be closed for this year. I mean, I still hope maybe there's some outside chance they get back for a few weeks, but odds are they're going to be closed for the year, right? Well, so then you say, well, why would their camp be open over the summer?
Right.
And why would their sleepaway camp they're supposed to go to in August be open? And why would we be able to take that family vacation we're supposed to take in the summer? And then you're like, well, why would the school reopen? And you can make yourself absolutely bananas. Yeah, like life is going to end. That's probably not really what's going to happen. Right. We just have to wait and see, though.
No, I agree. All right. Well, I feel better after talking to you. Hopefully people will feel better after. I seriously do. You know, like you said, there's you get caught in a vacuum and, you know, it's tough. Like Kelly loves the news. Like Kelly's like, if it rains, Kelly's watching the weather. She loves it. So even my son's like, Mom, stop watching this. And she's like, I like knowing what's going on. She's not freaked out, but like I walk through the room sometimes and I was like, I don't want to hear about this right now. You know?
I mean, it's so true. Look, I mean, you know, you and I have known each other a long time, and we've always been kind of, you know, into the politics of what's going on and the process and all of that. Like we're kind of losing all that. Like you don't even get to be like a, you know, political junkie anymore because there's nothing, you can't even find coverage of the campaigns at all, which I understand.
Right.
And the sports is the same way. And there's so many things that people really enjoyed as part of their life. And they're faded into the background. But I'll tell you what, when they come back, they're going to come roaring back. Oh. Right. I mean, could you imagine what baseball is going to be like that first weekend when they start playing again or, you know, like, you know, first weekend of the NFL, or if they get to the NBA playoffs or whatever it is, it's going to be crazy.
Oh, I'll bring it back to diabetes for a second. I'd do anything for my daughter not to have diabetes, but there have been so many good things that have come from it. It's hard to believe that would not have happened if she didn't have it. And I don't just mean like, I don't mean this podcast. I mean, just like the way we think or see or things. And there's going to be a lot of good stuff that comes out of this. You're right. Like, you know, you turn on a baseball game as a baseball fan and go, I cannot believe these guys are playing in front of 10,000 people. I wish there were more people there. People are going to be dying to get out, you know, and the ball teams are going to have to make season tickets pretty cheap, and you know, and everything's going to feel exciting again. I think that we have so many options for how to spend our time that it kind of created like a paralysis for some people. People were just like, well, there's too many options, so I'm not doing anything. And now all of a sudden people are going to pick again. This is what I think is important. I'm going to support it. I'm going to do it. You know?
Yeah. I think honestly, I think there's two things that are really going to happen once you get back to normal. One is people are going to remember how nice it was to be with other people, and they're going to make more of a point to do that. Like It was very easy to just text or call or not actually see people face to face. I think that this is reminding people how you need that. And the other thing is this idea of like experiences versus things, like actually, you know, living through something versus just owning something. Or I think that there was a trend towards that already. I think people are going to go way, way more towards that once this is all, you know, kind of moves back to normal.
Well, I'm glad we did this today because, like I said, this afternoon I was a little like, what's the point? And then I needed to be reminded. The point is, in a month or so, this is going to be over, and then that'll be the point. I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
No, of course, anytime.
Thank you so much, Adam, for coming on the show and sharing your feelings about the coronavirus. And for talking it through with me. I felt good about that. I really did like chatting with a friend and, going over real things that are happening and getting to like sort of sort through how I felt about them. Huge thanks, of course, to the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Go to contournext1.com to see if you're eligible for an absolutely free meter and to check out all of the reasons why this blood glucose meter, in my opinion, is the best one Arden has ever used. And don't forget touchedbytype1.org. Check out their programs, their awareness campaign, their dance program, everything. Just, pick through their website. Have a great time. Next week on the show, we're going to be doing some stuff with Jenny, and I actually have another person with type 1 diabetes who has had the coronavirus and is done with it now. I'll be interviewing them tomorrow, and if everything goes well, I should be bringing you that show in the next few days. Everybody stay safe, cover your coughs, cover your face, don't forget your hand sanitizer, and we'll get through this.